Out in the vast, rust-colored emptiness of Western Australia, in a region they call the Pilbara, there once sat a town. And not just any town, mind you. This was a place born of pure, unadulterated optimism, a little pocket of civilization plopped down in one of the most remote and rugged landscapes on the planet. This was Wittenoom. It began, as so many Australian ventures do, with the promise of treasure buried beneath the ochre earth. The treasure here wasn't gold or diamonds, but something far more mundane, and, as it turned out, infinitely more sinister. But in the late 1940s, no one was thinking about that. They were thinking about jobs' futures, building something new from the red dust up. Imagine, if you will, the sheer audacity of it. Carving a community out of a landscape that seems actively hostile to human settlement. The sun beats down with a ferocity that can buckle steel. The distances are immense, measured not in miles but in days of hard driving. Yet, here they came. The government, eager to develop the untamed North, saw potential. A company, Colonial Sugar Refining or CSR, saw profit. Ordinary people, many of them migrants fleeing a war-torn Europe, saw a chance. The setting itself was breathtakingly beautiful, adding to the tragic irony. The town was nestled at the mouth of a spectacular gorge, towering red cliffs that glowed at sunrise and sunset, scenery that makes you feel small and awestruck. For the families arriving, it must have felt like an adventure. They were pioneers building a modern town in the heart of the outback. They built a school, a hospital, a pub, a cinema. Wittenoom was going to be a showcase, a testament to Australian grit and ingenuity. A place where the future looked as bright and limitless as the vast blue sky above. The call went out and people answered. From every corner of Australia, indeed, the world, they came. If you were a young man with a strong back with a desire for work, Wittenoom was the place to be. The pay was good and the work was constant. CSR needed bodies to pull the blue asbestos from the earth and wasn't fussy where they came from. Boatloads of immigrants arrived, Italians, Yugoslavs, Greeks, Poles, with little more than the clothes on their backs and were shipped north to the Pilbara. Many couldn't speak English, but they could shovel, and that was all that mattered. Wittenoom became cosmopolitan, a melting pot in the middle of nowhere. Different languages echoed in the single men's quarters and in the general store. Survivors of war building a new life, tough, resilient, ready to work hard. Company provided basic accommodation better than what many had left behind. The promise of Australia realized here at the edge of the world. So what exactly was this stuff they were pulling out of the ground? Blue asbestos, or crocidolite, is a silicate mineral. It forms into long, thin, needle-like fibers. And when I say thin, I mean astonishingly, microscopically thin. You could fit hundreds of them across the width of a human hair. This fibrous nature is what made it so useful. You could spin it, you could weave it, you could mix it into cement to add incredible strength and fire resistance. It was the superhero of the mineral world. From the 1940s through the 1960s, asbestos was everywhere. It was in your walls, it was in your ceiling, it was in your floor tiles, it was in the insulation around your pipes, it was in the clutch in your car. It was quite simply the best material for the job. The problem, the terrible fatal problem, is that those same microscopic, needle-like fibers are perfectly designed to invade the human lung. When asbestos rock is broken, when it's crushed, when it's disturbed, it releases clouds of these tiny, invisible fibers into the air. They are so light they can hang suspended for hours, even days. Once inhaled, they travel deep into the lungs, and they never, ever come out. The body's defense mechanisms are useless against them. The fibers are like tiny, indestructible spears. For the people who lived there, especially the children, Wittenoom wasn't a place of danger. It was a paradise. Boundless freedom, set against epic natural beauty. Kids spent their days exploring the magnificent gorge, swimming in the cool waterholes, playing in the streets, playing in the open spaces. The town was safe, doors unlocked, everyone knew everyone, a tight-knit community forged by shared isolation and a pioneering spirit. It was by all accounts a wonderful place to grow up. The sun was always shining and adventure was just outside the front door. Everyday life had a rhythm dictated by the mine. The shift whistle would blow and the men would head off to work. Returning hours later covered head to toe in a fine, pale blue dust. It was the color of the town's prosperity. The dust was simply a part of life, a minor inconvenience like mud or dirt. The women would shake it from their husbands' work clothes before washing them, creating little blue clouds in their backyards. The men would come home and hug their children, transferring the dust from their overalls to their families. No one thought anything of it. It was just the dust. The dust was not just in the mine. It was everywhere. It coated every surface, settled on every windowsill, and mixed with the red dirt of the Pilbara to create this unique, shimmering gray-blue landscape. The milling process, where the rock was crushed to separate the fibers, was particularly dirty. The mill sat right next to the town. When the wind blew, which it often did, huge plumes of asbestos dust billowed directly over the houses, the school, and the playgrounds. Residents remember a permanent blue haze hanging in the air. Workers in the mine and mill faced the worst exposure. They worked in conditions now seen as criminally negligent. Archival photos show men shoveling raw asbestos with no respiratory protection. They look like ghosts, bodies and faces caked in dust. They ate lunch in that dusty air, breathing fibers with every bite. At shift end, they'd use compressed air hoses to blow dust off each other, blasting fibers into the air, into their lungs, and onto their clothes to be taken home. Contamination spread beyond the mine gates. Asbestos tailings were repurposed as free building material. The terrible truth is that the dangers were not entirely unknown. The 1940s had already seen medical reports linking asbestos to lung disease. The company, CSR, government health departments, they had access to the information they knew. A 1948 government report on Wittenoom flagged alarming dust levels. It recommended better ventilation. It recommended the use of respirators. The report warned of a likely surge in asbestosis among workers. Those warnings were mostly ignored or downplayed. Profits were too good, demand was too high. The company's response was corporate denial and deflection. CSR questioned the science. CSR blamed other factors, like smoking. They supplied masks. The masks were flimsy paper, clogging fast in dense dust. Many workers weren't properly instructed. Non-English speaking migrants were especially left without clear guidance. Workers were told to get on with the job. The company's priority was extracting asbestos cheaply and quickly. The first wave of the disaster didn't arrive with a bang but with a cough. A persistent, dry cough that wouldn't go away. Then came the shortness of breath. Men who had once been strong enough to work long, hard shifts in the mine found themselves gasping for air after climbing a flight of stairs. This was the onset of asbestosis. By the 1960s, the early warnings from doctors were becoming a reality. More and more ex-Wittenoom workers were being diagnosed. The mine finally closed in 1966, not primarily for health reasons, but because it had become unprofitable. The closure, however, did not stop the dying. It had only just begun. Then came the mesothelioma. In the late 1970s and 1980s, the true horror of Wittenoom's legacy began to emerge in full force. The long latency period was over. Men who had left the town decades earlier, who had built new lives and were looking forward to retirement, were suddenly receiving a death sentence. A diagnosis of mesothelioma was, and still is, utterly devastating. It is a cancer of unimaginable cruelty, causing immense pain and a slow, agonizing decline. As the death toll mounted and the true scale of the contamination became undeniable, the government's stance shifted from neglect to active erasure. The first official step was to begin winding the town down. In the late 1970s, the government adopted a policy of discouraging people from closing public services like the school, the nursing post. They wanted people to leave, hoping the problem would simply fade away with the last resident. The government began a program of purchasing and demolishing the houses one by one. Streets that were once full of life became lined with empty, derelict buildings waiting for the bulldozer. For the few remaining residents who refused to leave the only home they'd ever known, it was a lonely and surreal existence. The final blow came in 2007, when Wittenoom was officially degazetted. Its name was removed from all official maps and road signs were taken down. The state was trying to make the town, and its deadly secret, vanish. Today, the state of Western Australia officially does not recognize Wittenoom. The town is gone, but the tragedy endures.